In this video, we're going to work with a .txt file and look at how do you use Power Query within Power BI to import data from a txt file which is messy and clean. How do you clean it? The main focus I will have is on explaining you how do you approach this task, how do you think and sort of follow a good process around it, and I'll explain each and every step in detail. You can follow along with this video. I have provided a link to the file in the description of the video, so download it. You can practice along with me. So without further ado, let's get started. Hi, my name is Gurpreet, and at BI with Gurpreet, my mission is to help you learn and master the necessary skills and have the knowledge to launch a career within business intelligence successfully. Whenever you're working with Power Query, you're importing data, the first thing is to familiarize yourself with the actual data source. So if it is a file type data source, I will say open it in the native app and familiarize yourself with the data. So I've already included a link to this data inside the description for this video, so you can download and practice along. So this is a text file. So we're going to import data from a .txt or text file. So this is not like a Word document. These are .txt files. So there's no metadata. So, there's no like capitalizations and all the other things that you can do within Microsoft Word. This is just plain text data. Everything is stored as text data. So let's look at this. So this is data for a company called ABC Electronics Limited, and this is the sales data for January 2019. We can see there are some header rows right at the top here. So probably we'll need to get rid of this because this is not useful data for us. And then looks like here we have a row which contains the column titles or column headers or column names. So order ID, product, quantity ordered, price, each, order date, purchase address. Okay, so I can see we have order date here, and you can look at the date there. That's 01/22/19. So looks like this is date in US format. So I'm based in London. So whenever you have you're importing data and it contains a date field, be mindful of where it's coming from, in which format it is. So this is US format where it's MM, then DD, then YY. And my local profile is set to DD, MM, YY. So let's see how this will work when we actually import this in Power BI and how we can handle this correctly. Another thing I can see here is that this order date contains date and time together. So probably we will see if we can separate this into two separate columns, and then that will help us analyze if we want to see what's the sales trend during the whole day by hour, if there are certain hours where there is more footfall or more sales than the other time. So we'll separate this into date, actual date and time. And also let's look at the address. So looks like the purchase address, this is one string. So this is all one data. It contains the street address, the city name, I think the state code for US, and then there's the postcode for that address. So if I want to do some sort of analysis around city or state level and that sort of summarization, then we will need to separate this out as well. So these are the thoughts that, maybe you look at this data and you formulate some sort of ideas. You can make mental note of these things, or actually if you want, you can note down these things in a notes app or in a diary or a notebook. Another thing is always just scroll down and see what sort of data is this. So sometimes you will see in data where there are lots of blank rows, repeat headers, all those things. So let's see if we have that. So, okay, as soon as I mentioned, so here we can see we have blank rows here. So something to be mindful of again when we are working with this data. Another thing, I'm just going to keep on looking for a little more while. If you want, you can go right down to the bottom So in this case, I've already looked at this file, but if this was a new file, I probably will scroll down to the bottom and have an idea of this. So I can see here, these column names get repeated multiple times in this file. So there's order ID, product, quantity, order. So this is getting repeated. Now, again, this is something that we will need to handle. So I guess in terms of familiarizing with the data, I think we got a good idea. So we have got top header rows, which we don't need. So we need to get rid of. We got blank rows. We have got repeated column headers. So those things we need to address. And then in terms of the actual data, we need to be mindful of the date format. This is US date format and date and time together. So we probably want to separate it. And then the address, we would like to separate this into the street address, the city, the state code, and the actual postcode. So those are the things that come to my mind when I look at this. And then other things we can explore once we are actually within Power BI. So let's get started. So let's launch Power BI. So here I have already got it open. So when you launch Power BI, you might see a pop-up screen that comes up, a yellow screen. You can just close it. And within Power BI, it comes up as untitled. And then to get started, if you don't have an existing data set in there, this is a new file you're working on, then the first thing you will do is go on get data. That's where we will import data. And this step actually allows us to get into Power Query, which is the Power Engine or the actually hidden sort of gem within Power BI, because the key job when you're doing data analysis and business intelligence is to clean the data, to prepare the data. So to integrate data from different sources and then to prepare and reshape it and make it ready for analysis. So Power Query allows you to do that. So our file type is a text CSV file. So get data text CSV. So we select that. And then I have got my file saved on my desktop. So you just navigate to wherever you have saved it to the relevant folder and open that file. And when you click open, this dialog box opens, which gives you a preview of sort of what data is there. Now you can see here, it says it's tab delimited, Western European, this based on top 200 rows. And we can see all those header rows have come through. Again, this is only top 200 rows, so we won't see a lot of data here. Now, if it is something that you are happy with, then you just load and this will go into your Power BI data model. But in our case, we want to clean it. So to clean and to work with it in Power Query and to launch Power Query, you click transform data. So click on this button, transform data. And now you will notice this opens or loads a new window, Power Query Editor. Okay. And here on the left hand side in the queries, we have the sales January 2019, which is the sort of derived from the name of the text file that we have used. And on the right hand side, we can see there is in terms of applied steps. So this is where everything gets recorded in terms of all the actions we take, all the transformations we apply on our data get recorded in the applied steps. So in this case, what Power BI and Power Query has done is it's changed the data type for the columns, which is not relevant for now because we don't need it. So we're going to just delete this step of changed data type. Okay, we don't need that. Okay, now let's see our file here. First things first, we can see, okay, let me just say one more thing here. Go to the View tab on the top, in the ribbon on the top, go to View tab. If you don't have monospaced and show to white space checked, your data might look slightly different. Okay, and say this also is not checked. Okay, so your data might look like this. So let's get started with this. I think we will start with where it looks like this. Now, when you're working with text files, maybe if you do monospaced and white space, it's just a bit more readable, I guess. Apart from that, it's not a huge difference. Some of these cells you can see here, there are 3 dots there at the end. Well, those 3 dots means that there is more data basically. So if you expand this column, so you can see there was some text which was truncated. So that's what those 3 dots meant. Okay. Now, first things first, we want to get rid of these top rows, which we don't need. These are not part of our actual data for analysis perspective. So we have how many rows are there, which we don't need. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows, which we don't need. So how do we do that? Basically, in the home ribbon, on the top home ribbon, go to this reduce rows section. So there's a section called reduce rows. So we are going to say remove rows, remove top rows. So remove rows, remove top rows. And this opens a dialog box where you can specify how many rows you want to remove. So we want to remove top 7 rows. Okay. And press OK. Okay, boom. There we go. Now those rows are gone. And as soon as we did this, we can see here on the right hand side in applied steps, the remove top rows step has been added. Okay. Notice there's a gear icon next to the remove top rows, and you can click on it and this same dialog box again opens and you can change this number of rows. So suppose you are working with the rest of the files eventually where it's February and March and everything, you know, as you go along, and maybe there is one file which has a different number of rows, then you can come here, this particular step, just change those number of rows. Okay, so any of these applied steps which have a gear icon next to it, you can click on the gear icon and modify some of those settings. Okay, all right, that's one thing. Now next is our first row now contains the actual column names. Okay, so let's promote this first row to the header row. How do we do that? Again, on the home ribbon, go to transform section here, and in transform you have use first row as headers. So if you do that, there we go. As soon as we did that, headers got promoted. So we can see order ID, products, quantity ordered, price each, and order date and purchase address and all those things. And also the Power Query has applied this step automatically of change types. So it's applied some data types to our columns. Usually Power Query does a really good job of applying the data types, but in this case, because we know that there are issues in terms of the date format and other things, I don't want to do anything like automatic. We'll go through and pick our relevant data types for the columns, and especially we don't have too many columns in this data anyway. So let's remove this step. Okay, so we have 3 steps at the moment. Remove the top rows, then we promoted the headers. Okay, next thing. Now we know our data. Remember when we looked at the data, our data contains blank rows inside it. So how do we deal with the blank rows? Basically, again, we want to remove the blank rows. So home ribbon, remove rows, and here it says remove blank rows. Okay, and again, step got added, removed blank rows. Okay, next we have, if we see, actually, I think it's easier to see probably in the quantity column, where if we say load more values, here you can see, look, quantity ordered. So find a column where the number of values is quite small, the list of values, separate values is small. So go to one of those columns and again click on this drop down arrow. It will show you the list, and if it doesn't have the whole list, you can click on load more and it should show you the complete list of different values available. Now here we have quantity ordered, because quantity order, the row column names get repeated multiple times in the data. We don't need this. All you need to do is just uncheck from here the quantity ordered. Okay, now by doing that, all that whole row across with all the column names will be deselected, so it won't be available in our data now. So that's been deselected, removed. Okay, that's that now. Okay, also we see here something we didn't preempt when we were looking at the text file is we have these blank columns here. Okay, what we want to do is we want to get rid of these 2 columns. Now what we can do is we can click on these 2 columns and right click and say remove columns. We can do that. This will work fine if there are always going to be 2 blank columns on the right hand side. I prefer where depends on the situation, but let's cancel this step for now. We know that we will have probably this format of data where we have these columns from order ID up to purchase address. And we want to keep those columns, and anything else we want to remove. So that's a better way of implementing it. So how do we do that? You select your columns. So purchase address is selected, and then you shift click on the order ID. So select a column, then go and shift click on the first column here. So we have all the columns selected. Sorry. Again, right click and remove other columns. So we want to keep these columns and remove the other columns. So remove other columns. Those columns got removed, but notice what happened here. The order of the columns has switched. So order already was the first column, then product, then on. So now it's reversed. Why that happened? The way we selected the columns, we selected the last column first and then the first column. So that also makes a difference. Just something to, I intentionally did this to sort of make you aware of this. So now I've just deleted that last step of removing other columns. And now what we're going to do is we're going to click on the order ID column first, then shift click on the purchase address column. And now if we say remove other columns, again, that step's been added. Those extra columns been removed, plus the order of columns has been preserved. Okay, so far so good. We're almost there. Okay, now next thing is we have got rid of the blank rows. We got rid of the extra header rows. We have got rid of the repeating column headers. We've got rid of extra columns that we had. Next is now to start looking at the sort of data type for the column. So this order ID is a sort of a whole number, a fixed number. So we're going to change this to whole number. As soon as you do that, you notice the alignment has changed. So if I just quickly remove this. So if you see here, it's left aligned. So text is always left aligned in the cell, similar to how it's in Excel. And when you change it to number, it's right aligned. Okay. Next, product name, that's a text column, and it's already selected as a text column in terms of data type, so it's fine. Quantity ordered, that is a whole number. So let's change this to whole number. Okay, that's great. Again, you can see from left aligned to right aligned here. Okay, price each. Now, we know this was US data, and you can actually see here by default it's saying fixed decimal numbers with the dollars. So let's just select that. For currency, it doesn't say currency. It says the data type you have to choose for currency is the fixed decimal number. Okay. Next is the order date column. Now, if I go here and change this to date time, let's try doing that. Look what happened. We have all these errors happening because it's not able to convert that first date. So let me just undo that step. So this 21/01/22/19. Now the date format on my local machine is set to DDMMYY, and it's expecting this 22 here. It's expected to be a month, and 22 is not a valid month, so it throws an error message. So something to be mindful of when you're doing this, looking at where the data came from. So in this case, how do we do this? We use the locale functionality, using locale. So we can specify or override the local settings and specify how we are importing data from a specific locale. So in this case, this is date time. So data type is date time, but it is not United Kingdom English. It is US. So you find English, United States, and then you press OK. And there you go. Now it's imported and it's actually showing in the right format as per UK. So it's showing DDMMYY. Okay, YYYY. And that's there. And then next we have the purchase address, which is text field. So that's fine. Okay. Now, I think we have got the right formatting or data types for the columns. Next things we looked at was, okay, for order date, I want to separate the date and time into two separate columns. How do we do that? You can go to the ribbon, and at the top, make sure you select add column, not transform, add column because we're going to create a new column. So go to add column, then you go time, and then say time only. So we select the date and time column, which is the order date here. Go add column, select time, and then say time only. And there we have it. We have the time available. Let's rename this column. How we rename it? Double click where the column name is and type in the name. So order time, that's our column there. I'm going to bring it next to the order date. Now this order date, I want to only keep the date. So again, now we don't select the add column. We go to transform and then date and date only. So this applies to the transform functionality will apply to the existing column, whereas add column would apply that functionality and create a new column. So for time, we created a new column, and for the date, we just in place just changed it to date only. So we have the order date and order time. Wonderful. Keep an eye on the steps on the right hand side as well. So we inserted the time, we renamed the column, we reordered the columns, and then extracted dates. So all those steps are being applied. Next, purchase address. So this address actually, if we see, we have the street, then comma, then Boston, then comma, then state, space, and then the postcode. Okay, so if I want to separate it into columns, first thing we can do is we can separate using the, either we can use the comma, or we can use the space, or we can use comma space. So let's look at different options, like how this will work. So how do we split this into columns? It's very easy within Power Query. So you right click on the column and then split column, okay, by delimiter. So we are using a delimiter, and here it allows you to pick a delimiter. So comma is one delimiter. So if we do using comma, let's say comma, and we have multiple commas, so we will be generating multiple columns. So each occurrence of the delimiter, and then there is advanced options as well. So split into columns. We are splitting this into columns, so we don't need to change this for now. But remember, you can do that using splitting into rows as well. But for now, we don't need to change it. This is going to split into columns, and click OK. And there we have it. So we have 3 columns now. So purchase address 1, 2, and 3. So we have the street address. We have this address 2, which contains the city name. And then we have the state code and the PIT postcode. Okay. Now, this is one way of doing it. Let's actually cancel this, because why did I do this is if you see here, there is space in front of this because these values were separated by comma and then space as well. So maybe if we try using a delimiter, a custom delimiter, so split column by delimiter, and instead of comma we say custom, and we specify that we use comma and a space, and for each occurrence of this, and press OK. And now also we get the split, but it's cleaner because we don't have that space in front or end of these rest of the text values. So this purchase address column 1, we will rename this to, let's rename the purchase address. This second one, this is the city. Okay. Now the last one, this has the state code and the postcode. So let's split this further. Again, same way, right click, split columns by delimiter. And Power Query does a really good job of picking up the delimiter. So it picks up that this text values are separated by space, and we just want to use the leftmost delimiter because it's just 2 values, 1 space between, and then click OK. And there we have it. We have the column separated, and then it changed the data type as well. If you see here, the data type has been changed as well because the last value is in numbers. Now it's up to you if you want to keep it as numbers or not. Because this is postcode, we are not going to do any calculations on it. So there's no idea of the sort of converting it into numbers for now. So I'm just going to remove this and keep it as text. and this changed the column name. So this is the state code or state, you can keep it if you want, and this is the postcode. And there we have it. So we have our data in really good format. Now, how do we know that we have done a good job of cleaning it? You can always check the quality of this data. So how do we do that? You go to View tab and you click on Column Quality. So in the ribbon, go to the top, View tab, and click on Column Quality. And there we have it. So it shows you how many valid values are there, how many errors, and how many empty rows are there. One thing you have to be mindful of, that Power Query doesn't show you the entire data set. It shows you only 1,000 rows. So if there are issues in the rest of the data, you will learn later. You won't know at the moment. So for now, it seems this column's clear. This is also no errors, no empty rows, no errors, no empty rows. So valid 100%, 100%, 100%. So all these columns have 100% valid values, no issues with that. Some other things you can look at is you can look at column distribution. So how many different and unique values are there? So product column, you can see there are 19 distinct values. So 19 different products, no unique, there's no product which has only been ordered once. So everything has been ordered more than once. So no unique values. Order ID. Now this is interesting. So we can see here there are 959 distinct order IDs and 921 unique. That means there are multiple rows for some of the order IDs. So order ID is not unique, because if there is more than one item in an order, then there are multiple rows for that order ID. Okay, so that is something you have to keep in mind, that order ID is not unique here. So this we learned by just looking at this in terms of the column distribution. So something again to be mindful of. And usually you need an ID column which is unique. In Power Query, you can really easily add a new column and as a index column, and you can choose where do you want to start it from, or you can give it a custom numbering. I want to start the index from, say, 1001 and increment by 1, and then say OK. And we will have an index column. Okay, and we can bring it to the front. Actually, let's move it. And there we have our index column. This is all unique values now. So this, you can see 1,000 distinct, 1,000 unique values. Okay, then we have the products that we looked at, this quantity as well. There are 2 unique values. So there is some quantity which is only ordered once. The rest of the things get repeated. Price each, again, price has not been sort of repeated. 17 distinct values. Interesting. Order date. So there are 31 distinct. So this is January data, all the 31 days. So there are some order placed on every day of this month of January, 31 different days. Interesting. Order time, purchase address. Maybe let's look at the state and city column. So state code, 8 distinct state codes, no unique. So basically there are multiple orders for each state. Similarly, city, there are 9 cities. So 8 states, 9 different cities. So all these orders have come from 9 different cities from 8 states. So there's 1 state which has 2 cities from it. Rest of these 1-to-1 looks like. And then we have postcodes here. 10 distinct postcodes and no unique. So every postcode gets repeated. So there we have it. We have our data all cleaned up, and I think it's in pretty good format. Now, once you're happy with data and you've done everything, sometimes always double check the names of your columns, make sure they look clear. In this case, it was pretty good in terms of how we got it initially, and then the ones we created, we renamed it. And also your query name should be sort of meaningful as well. So sales January 2019. Yeah, I think you can, if you want to shorten it, you can shorten it. You can sort of say Jan 2019 or Jan 19. So let's say sales Jan, I'll keep it to 2019. Okay, so we can change here on the right hand side under the query settings the name of the query, or you can right click and rename it as well. So Power Query allows you to do the same thing in multiple ways. So one is the context menu using the ribbon and the ribbon, or right clicking and using that context menu. So just remember, you can achieve the same thing in multiple ways. So now we are happy with this data. We want to load this into Power BI, into our data model. So you click on close and apply. So home, in the ribbon, home, first button, close and apply. And by default, if you click on it, it will be close and apply only. Drop down is apply and close. So in this case, we want to apply and close. So once you click it, you can see here now it says it's loading the data. So now what within Power BI is happening, all the transformations that we applied, all the applied steps get applied to the entire data set. So remember, we were working with the top 1000 rows. Now it gets all these transformations get applied to the entire data set, and it gets imported into the Power BI model. Now remember, nothing has been saved. Our file is still called untitled. So it'll be a good idea at this point to save. Now let's save it on desktop, and we will call this ABC Electronics Sales Analysis 2019. Okay. And this is, remember, this is a pbix file, .pbix file. So Power BI files has the extension of pbix, and you can save it. I'm saving this on desktop. Okay, there we have it. So we have cleaned the file, and now the data is loaded into the model, and we can start using it to create visualizations. To view your data, you can go to the data tab here, and you can click on the relevant table, and there you have it. So you can look at your data, explore it in various ways. Now this is the entire data set available to you, and you can see here right at the bottom, 9,681 rows. That's the size of data in this table. So your reporting in terms of the model view, we only have one table, so there's no sort of other table. So we just can see our one table in here. You can make it bigger to see the rest of the columns as well. So there we have it. So in this lesson, what we did in this video is we looked at our sort of text file. We explored it. So remember, the first step is just look at the file in the native app and see what sort of issues could be there, what sort of format it is. It sort of allows you to build that in your mental note around the things you might need to do to clean this data. So we saw header rows, extra header rows. Then we saw there were blank rows. We saw there were repeating headers. Then we saw the issue with the date format. Then we saw that we can split the date and time, and the same with the purchase address, splitting it into the city and then the state and the postcodes. So we applied all those things, applied the right data type, and then we loaded the data into our data model for analysis. So in this video, we'll stop here. In the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to look at how do we import the rest of the months of 2019. And this is where the power of Power Query comes into picture, where we don't have to apply all these transformations individually to the files. This is where Power Query does that magic work, and we will also understand how do you efficiently work with those multiple files, combine it into one data file in the right way, and then import that data model into our Power BI data model, so that then we can start working on the reporting, analysis and reporting out of it. So thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next video. If you have any questions regarding the contents of this video, then please leave a comment and I'll respond back to you. Also, like and share this video and subscribe to the channel if you want to get notified regarding once the next video drops, and I'll see you next time.